been corralled to chair, which I'm happy to do. This session will be a very interesting one. We have three distinguished speakers. The theme is survey, preservation, and presentation. And our first speaker will be Armin Panter from Germany, speaking on the reconstruction and presentation of the Synagogues of Unterlimpurg and Steinbach by Eliezer Sussman. Armin is the director of the Hallisch Francische Museum in Slavisch Hall, and you'll learn more about his role in his presentation. So, without further ado, I ask Armin to come forward, and we will save all questions. No, we may have after each talk. Yeah, so we'll have time. If our speakers are by not prolonging this introduction, we will have time for questioning, I'm sure, after each talk. So, Armin, come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, I speak about the reconstruction and presentation of the Synagogues of Unterlimpurg and Steinbach by Eliezer Sussman. I have been invited by Mr. Levin because I have the opportunity to reconstruct a synagogue with paintings from Eliezer Sussman and the remains of a second synagogue, probably also painted by Sussman. But I have to admit, I'm not a Judaist. I even can't read Hebrew. But it makes sense to be here because the results of the reconstruction were the restoration were the determining factors for the reconstructions of the synagogues. I tried to present you how we found a solution to present the panels of the two Sussman synagogues in our museum. But first of all, I have to give you a very short overview. Since the Reformation, it was forbidden for Jews to live in the Protestant imperial town of Schwäbisch Hall. But in the 17th and 18th century, two Jewish families were finally able to acquire charts of protection, and they were allowed to live in Unterlimpurg, an outlying quarter of Schwäbisch Hall. The two families didn't establish a community, and they had no possibility to build a freestanding synagogue, but Moses Meyer, one of those families, constructed in his house in the roof truss a wooden room and ordered in 1738 or 39 Eliezer Sussman to paint the walls. In the time between 1500 till the beginning of the 19th century, it was usual in rural areas of Germany that the synagogues, only a room under a roof, stood in private houses. In the year 1785, the last Jewish owner of the house with the synagogue in Unterlimpurg had to declare himself bankrupt, and the building was sold to a Christian buyer. The new owner let stand the synagogue under the roof. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Jewish teacher Nathan Hähnlein discovered the treasure and gave a lecture about the synagogue. The historical club, not the town of Schwäbisch Hall, the historical club, and Hähnlein was a member of the club, bought the panels for the museum. The volunteer curator just put the panels on the walls but did not try to reconstruct the original situation you see here. Before the Nazis came to power, the historical club got a new building for his museum. The collection was moved little by little, and in 1933 they striped down the synagogue and brought the panels in the basement of the new museum. It was not really an act of resistance. At the same time, the old president of the club was replaced by a compliant man. but it is a fact that the panels were stored and not destroyed. After the Second World War, the town wanted to exhibit the synagogue in the museum. It was one of the first museums which established a Jewish section, but we have no reason to be proud. A carpenter cut the panels and put them in a decorative way in a too small room. The responsibles destroyed the original structure. Here you see the presentation of the year 1959. You see it's a disorder. In 2001, we could present the synagogue in a restored building that belonged now to the museum. We had no notations or sketches of the original arrangement of the panels, but we found a photo which shows a part of the room in the year 1997, before the synagogue was sold, as an inscription on the reversement of the photo tells us. But let's start with the ceiling. That's how we show it now. We couldn't find any logical system how the 15 round pictures of animals on the ceiling were composed. But the restorer showed us the irregular marks of old sawings and the unruffled surface of the cut with a modern circular saw. By looking on the wood grain on the reverse side of the planks, we could compose 5 white planks with 3 pictures. I think you can see. You have those parts just like this, and because of the lines on the wood, we could put them together. And these planks were fixed on a strong beam on the roof truss. The wooden surface under and beside the beam had different discolorations. The forms of the discoloring showed the sequence of the planks. I'm quite sure that the roof is probably reconstructed. When we know the measures of the roof, we also know the measures of the floor, about 355 to 395 centimeters. The ground view of the house is not rectangular, also the way the walls compose corners of 82 and 98 degrees. For the reconstruction, we used the photo made in 1997. It shows the last status in the house in Unterlimpurg. The southern wall, the women's side, has openings, as you can see. The ornamental stripe on the top is continuous. It looks logical. I think you can see. The western wall with the entrance can also be reconstructed by the photograph. Now it's about the same position now as you have seen in the old photographs. The openings of the women's side were continued on the western side by new cuttings in the panels. Next to the door, on which a cash box for donation was attached, we see a panel with texts concerning the giving of donations. Perhaps next to it, there was a black and white panel dedicated to the destruction of the temple. I was criticized of the panel on the left side of the door. Maybe you can see it here. It looks like half a panel. Here you see it's only a half a panel. But it's shown like this in the old photo. And the constant ornament is connecting the two panels. It's a detail from this panel to the next. For the reconstruction of the eastern wall, we had no hint, but we can assume that the Aron HaKodesh stood between the two windows, a panel with a prayer of the morning and two lines blowing trombones, but probably sat over the shrine, as we find it in the Haupt Synagogue here in the Jerusalem Museum. Because of the ornamental stripe, we could fix two panels with prayers next to it. The rest is fiction. About the northern wall, we know nothing, and probably not much is conserved because it was an outer wall. It's a pity, but the open northern wall allows us to present the synagogue like a stage. The remaining panels are hanging on a wall outside so the visitor can see the painting from close. Now I come to the next synagogue. And I show you again Schwäbisch Hall. Recently, we got some other panels also painted by Eliezer Sussmann. The synagogue belonged to the village Steinbach near Schwäbisch Hall. The distance between the two synagogues was only about 600 meters, but they belonged to different territories. Schwäbisch Hall was a Protestant imperial town. Steinbach belonged to the Catholic monastery of Comburg. You see on the right back, it's here. The Unterlimpurg synagogue was about here, the Steinbach synagogue about here. To celebrate services of worship, the men from Steinbach and Unterlimpurg had come together for the Mincham Forum, but they could not build a community. In 2001, the owner of the house in Steinbach noticed traces of colors on the boards and beams on the top floor of her house. The ornamental design of the painting that was only visible in a few places could be, we think, attributed to Eliezer Sussmann. Archives proved that the building had been in Jewish possession and that it had housed the synagogue in the mid-18th century. When the paintwork had not been, why the paintwork had not been discovered earlier was due to a number of different reasons. Most of the paneling had been removed in the 19th and 20th century and used for different purposes. The panels, still in their original position, had been painted over twice, probably back in the 19th century, presumably when the rooms were no longer used as a synagogue. The panels were coated with a lime wash with a high protein content. This formed a yellowish layer over the painting that can be seen today. You see there are you can see two different colors in the painting over it. It's a yellowish and a white one. During the Second World War, all the roof trusses in Hall were coated once again with a lime wash as a form of fire protection. So twice lime wash was put over the old painting of the synagogue. In 2003, the house in Steinbach was sold, and the upper story, that was in a poor state of repair, was removed. All the paneling was ripped out. When this came to the notice of the museum, the Historische Verein für Württembergisch-Franken acquired all the boards and beams that could possibly have been in the synagogue. Then we have the panels heat-treated against time-by infestation. It's the only photo I have of the old house where the synagogue was housed. Here you can see the opening to in the women's side. As part of a degree project at the Institute of Technology of Painting at the Stuttgart State Academy of Art, the individual pieces were cleaned, the painting techniques analyzed, and in some places, the original layer of the paint exposed. The final year student, Christel Lebo, drafted a concept for the restoration of the pieces, reconstructed the rooms as they would have appeared at that time, and constructed a model of the roof, truss, and the synagogue. In 2007, the largely intact paneling from the women's school, the women's side, and the rest of the men's school from the actual synagogue room were installed in the Niederfränkisches Museum and made accessible to the public together with the Unterlimpurg Synagogue. The building, which housed the synagogue, dated from the early 16th century. It was extended in 1716, 1717, and as a dendrochronicle dating has revealed, a new roof was added. It was at this time that the boards of the synagogue were installed. I'll show you the model. Historical surveys of the building have revealed that the main school was at the northern gable end. This is the eastern wall of the main school. The east wall in the roof space was freestanding. The west side was enclosed by the sloping ceilings, resulting in a room with a floor space of approximately 4 to 5.5 meters. The door was on the south wall towards the east. To the west of this door, similarly on the south wall, there was a wooden louver giving onto the women's section. I think you can see. It's the louver for the women, and it's the eastern wall for the men, and the most important, you have nearly all of this room for the women, the women's school, as it's always written in the archives. The floor area in the women's school measured about 3 to 3.5 meters. Also, the sloping ceiling of the west made the actual area that could be used considerably smaller. The women's entrance was on the east wall, opening northwards. A panel wall without any openings formed the southern wall. The room has mostly survived intact. Of the main school, on the contrary, apart from the shared southern wall, only a few boards from the paneling remained. As already mentioned, both rooms were probably decorated by Eliezer Sussman, with the artist employing 2 different techniques. He used black paint only in the women's section, which he applied directly on the boards in general brushed strokes. The water sable paint soaked into the wood and has since become indelible. This has enabled the removal of the line application with a scalpel. As tests on various boards suggest, the whole room was probably decorated with leaf tendril ornaments, as you see it here. For reasons of conservation, the few panels of the main school have not been cleaned. Sussman applied a foundation of white lime wash, just as in the Synagogue of Unterlimpurg. He then added various water sable colors over the bright, smooth surface. The paint used to cover these up at later date has fused with the original paintwork. In addition, the bonding of the foundation paint to the wood surface is weak, resulting in the formation of flake clumps over the course of time. Exposing the underlayer would therefore have been resulted a considerable loss of original material. The painting on the southern wall, with the louver of the women's section, can just be made out under the layer of lime wash applied at the later date. The lower part of the paneling you see here, approximately 40 centimeters from the floor, was painted red. Presumably, they did without ornamentation in this area, which would have been concealed by benches. In the Synagogue of Unterlimpurg, the lower section was not even painted at all. Leaf and tendril ornamentation can be made out on top of the red ink. I hope you can see. We didn't touch it because if we clean it, we destroy the original painting. So with that we show history and we don't touch it. The restorer tried it, but we would destroy. One panel that was removed back in the 19th century and inserted face downwards in the floor still retains the original color in pristine condition. In the right-hand quarter of the panel, in landscape form, tendrils can be seen, the remaining area being taken up by Hebrew characters. Fragments of the last part of the Aramaic prayer, blessed is the name of the Master of the universe, said when the Torah is unrolled, can be deciphered. Unlike in the synagogue in Unterlimpurg, only very little of the paneling in the main school has survived. By contrast, the women's section, which in Unterlimpurg could not be reconstructed, has been largely rebuilt. The number of the synagogues established in the roofs of private residences in the 18th century must have been considerable, as rural Jewish communities could not erect a freestanding prayer house. Only very few, however, have survived. Based on the fragments of the Steinbach synagogue and on the research carried out on the roof construction of the building in which it was housed, it has been possible to chronicle the architectural structure of this room synagogue. This alone attests to the real value of its discovery. A model and the reconstruction of the Steinbach Women's School enable visitors to the museum to appreciate the layout and the spatial conditions prevalent in 18th century rural synagogue. The quality of the painting, as well as the religious texts and pictorial elements created by Eliezer Sussman, can be seen by looking inside the synagogue in Unterlimpurg. Together, both synagogues are a unique testament to the life and culture of rural Jewish communities in the 18th century, and their importance stretches far beyond the area around Schwäbisch Hall. And you are all invited to come to our museum to see the two synagogues. Thank you very much.
I will stay put. So that was a fascinating presentation on recovered memory and also contemporary technologies for reconstructing what has been lost. Do you want to take some questions? Are there questions from the audience?
I wanted to ask you regarding the painting itself, if the later line, how early, was it something common in the beginning of the 18th century? In other words, at the time of the painting, there was a layer of lime underneath the painting.
Yes.
And my other question is the colors. Were they red and blue, or did you see a green in the color? colors, the original colors? You see
The
it?
lime wash
The blue
was
becomes green over
used
time.
at that time, not only by Sussman, you find it also in furniture, paintings. It's the same technique.
Mhm.
And I think I have written down the colors. There's no green.
Snow green?
Yeah.
So then what are the red, snow green, there's blue as well? Black? Yeah.
To say nothing wrong, I have written down what colors we found. I give you if it's okay.
Okay, all right, that's good.
First of all, as you know, I think Eliezer Sussman didn't paint the Unterlimpurg Synagogue, but one of his colleagues maybe. But I want to ask you about the photograph, which the original photograph from 1907. The whole reconstruction was based on this photograph.
Yes.
But as I mentioned somewhere, you can see that it was already partly dismantled when it was taken, because the panel on the floor is a prayer that part of that was probably somehow else, and also about the symmetrical problems. And so I want to ask, what's the logic of reconstruction according to a photograph which you know it wasn't the original, or you might think it's not original, it's not the way it was constructed, it was painted.
So first of all, we had nothing but only the panels. We had no plan, nothing. We had one, you have seen one article in the 27 it's written about, and there are some hints for the reconstruction, and we had got this photograph, and on the back of the photograph it's written by hand that the synagogue was sold in 97, and this shows how it was in the house in Unterlimpurg. So it was the only thing I had to reconstruct, and it looks quite logical if you see the ornaments, the southern wall. So we had nothing else for the reconstruction, and yeah.
Let's take one more question, and then we need to move on for our other speakers.
Did you,
Elisa?
the drawing in Steinbach, did you do it with the UV, ultraviolet?
Yes.
I see.
I didn't, but it was in the academy in Stuttgart and Freiburg. But from the main side, only the part of the southern wall is still.
That was short, so Tom, you can have a quick question.
Have you learned anything more about Sussman, about who might have invited him, and do you think he might have painted more?
We didn't find anything about
Did he
it.
stay long enough to paint any more that we don't know about? His length of time, do we know?
We didn't know about the Steinbach Synagogue. Nobody knew it. It was really a big surprise that we found it, and it was quite difficult to get it.
Thank you.